Thank you. There's a mic right in the middle. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Lewis Bell. I want to welcome you to this exciting CDX demo that we're getting ready to do for you and brief. Contract support for PO Digital Architecture team, and I'll allow the rest of the panel to introduce themselves.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jitesh Malaparakal. You can call me Jitesh. I'm a solutions engineer at Mulesoft, supporting the CDX initiatives here. I support specifically Navy as well as other DoD accounts as well. Thank you very much to Tara.
Tara Duckworth, Navor 5.0, supporting PEO Digital as the chief engineer, also a solution architect, the product owner, and everything in between as it relates to CDX.
Hey, I'm John. Less job titles than Tara, but I am with Mulesoft, 10-year Navy vet. Excited to be here.
Afternoon, Paul Johnson, PEO Digital Contract Support. Tiffany?
All right. Okay. So everyone's seen the CNO's NAV plan, and the North Star specifically talks about readiness for sustained high-end joint and combined combat by 2027. So what we want to be able to do is also align with the North Star from Information Superiority Division 2.0, which is securely move data from anywhere to anywhere. We need to be able to have ready platforms, as the CNO talks about in her NAV plan. We need to know what data is needed, where it needs to be, and how to assist with sustaining combat surge ready forces. Being able to fight from the mock. Again, what data is needed, where we need to provide it to give warfighters the knowledge that they need to fight and win. And that's not just typically what you think of operations when you think about networks, but it's even from a warfighter to an actual platform like a shooter, and the weapon systems that they need to maintain. We also think about operationalizing robotic and autonomous services. How can we do things automatically? If I have triggers that are set up between different platforms, utilizing APIs, how can I get the data to where it needs to be in order to automate something to be kicked off? Contributing to joint warfighter ecosystems, depending on having non-manual intervention. The more manual things that we put in place, the harder it becomes for our warfighters to actually move faster, move at speed, and pivot. We can also make a lot more mistakes that way. People are tired. They've been working 12-hour shifts, trying to get data to the right point to make the right decisions decisively. And then, like I've already mentioned, covering Dawn ISV 2.0, we need to be able to outpace our competitors, have ready maneuverable data driving decision advantage. So that security piece and moving data from anywhere to anywhere is hugely important when it comes to being able to have an API-led architecture and communications between different platforms, different systems, alerts, weapon systems, logistics, like you name it. Having an API marketplace and that API-led architecture will directly support and hit the vision for the CNO NAV plan and for the ISV 2.0. So for the next slide, just to really kind of hit the high point real quick is, everybody has here a phone. And if I want to order laundry detergent, I'm probably going to open up Amazon. I'm going to see what kind of scents they have, what kind of products that they have, what time is it going to be delivered, what's the quantity that they have, what's the cost of the product that it is that I'm looking for. And all of that stuff on the back end is really APIs that give you that easy customer experience by finding the data that you need immediately.
Yeah, and just to back up on that, it's the number of services that are presented to our fingertips at that user experience level that are wrapped up as APIs. And these APIs are assets that can be consumed across an ecosystem for all kinds of different functions. We take a manual process, we digitize it. I think often in the Navy we stop there. What can we do to start codifying those processes as services of record in an ecosystem like we're doing here. So think about the difference between how we do this on our smartphone and that sailor that's out at sea on a ship trying to find a part. And then the number of different places they have to call around, emails they have to send to figure out inventory, how much it costs, where that part is, how are they going to get it delivered, or my background aviation, even thinking like how many different systems do you have to log into to log a flight. It's really challenging, and it hits the architect at a different level, hits the CIO at a different level, hits the PM at a different level, and it hits the end user certainly at a different level. But this flow of operational transactional data, and then what are we doing after that to move that data in an automated way over to the analytics side? Do you have any more on that? So it's really hard to change when, Tiffany, when the architecture looks kind of like this, and I'm sure you've all seen different slides that look like this. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to get data to and from different systems in an architecture, and there's batch, there's ETL, there's point-to-point, there's custom code, there's Excel, CSV, email, phone calls. The way that we do that, you can put a sailor on each one of these lines too for manual processes. It's really hard to solve for any organization, especially hard in the DoD, the silos that we have. And it's even harder, I think, when we have a hard time saying who owns that space in between systems. So who owns that data fabric? Who owns that middle ground? The way we're doing it now, it's not fast. The data isn't fast. The integrations aren't fast. It's not resilient to different forces that are coming in. When something breaks, it's really hard to figure out where it's broken. It's not governable. It's not repeatable. We're not really kind of reusing the ATO. And it's not helping us scale to the enterprise and to secure for the enterprise. So again, this manifests differently for different users. And at that sailor on a ship, really showing up as a lot of swivel chair, a lot of manual data manipulation. If you're a data scientist, I think it's a lot of data that you're bringing in an Excel or a CSV. You have to go cleanse it on your own. Yeah, anything else on this one?
Yeah, and just to kind of think about the picture that's on your guys' right, that's essentially what we have right now in the enterprise. We have multiple different systems and multiple different owners that have their own gateway. And every system owner says, you have to come to me. You have to directly interface with me. So that starts to lead to tight coupling. In the case of APIs, same thing. We have people that say, okay, well, you have to connect to me specifically to get data through an API. Well, now I have to get some other type of data from a different system, but I need to be able to reuse that same API. So now I have to actually rewrite APIs and redo work, which takes away from time spent that I need to do something else, or that I need to help a different customer, that I need to get data faster to an endpoint. We have these everywhere across the enterprise, and it's really disheartening to see that this is where we are. We are trying to transform, and we are trying to grow. But wouldn't it be great if we had a marketplace where we could reuse APIs, where we could cut down on time to ATOs, where we could make things a lot more transparent. We could move data faster. We could have people see, oh, there's an API that I need from another system that I need information from, instead of trying to figure out, well, who do I go to? Then I have to go through an entire requirements document and all these things. So really just to kind of highlight is that one piece that you see on the side, we have those by the hundreds or thousands across the entire Department of the Navy.
And from there, Tiffany, we can move on. Hard to understand the cost of the problem without understanding the future state and where we want to get. There's a lot of policy that we put up here with Fulcrum, with ISV 2.0, and then with Navy Blueprint. I'm sure you've all read it and can reference some of these things on the slide. But good thing is these challenges are known. Good thing is there's a direction, there's a vision that we want to move into. And what we're going to get into is how to connect this kind of policy with reality and action. And I think there's a lot of these challenges in efficiency that have always been there. But now as we're trying to push towards legacy modernization, we're trying to push towards AI, the kind of basics of architecture in an API economy, reusable economy that haven't been there are getting pushed to the forefront. So I always think, back from when I was in flight school, you have to trace a drop of oil or a drop of hydraulic fluid or a drop of gas through your system. It goes in, where all does it go? And how can we start doing that with our architecture, with our data from where it's created on the operational transactional side, all the way through where we're doing data science on it and doing data-driven decisions based on that. Anything else?
Yeah, the last thing really kind of to add to this one is it's great to see that we have other sister services, that we have fourth estate agencies that are already doing these types of things, and they're kind of leading the way with API-led architecture. The ability for us to be able to use a single marketplace to do these things, again, is really going to be critical because we have to have the ability to advance quickly. And as a matter of fact, APIs are part of Zero Trust. Being able to have a marketplace, being able to secure your APIs, because that's how we're actually going to do automation much faster and get data to where it needs to go. And I think it's pillar 6, where it specifically calls out multiple things in relation to APIs, and this enables us to reach our Zero Trust objectives much faster. Specifically because we can control who gets data. We can see where the data is going. And as you hear Ms. Rathbun and everybody else talk, it really is genuinely all about the data. If we don't know where our data is going, if we can't do identity management and those types of things, then how good is that data going to be for us? Go ahead, Tiff.
So this is this new paradigm of, that P was really loud, excuse me. This is the new paradigm of composable architecture that we want to move towards with the CDX. And in this diagram, I want you to think that we, as the users, are up top, and down bottom are all the systems, all that data's in that we're trying to get to. We have some kind of experience layer where we're interacting with the data. And so these 3 layers are really important in with what the CDX is doing with composable architecture. First, at the bottom, the system layer, we talk about unlocking that data in a standardized manner. Words like abstraction, decoupling data flows, even the ATO. So I get this integration to a backend system ATO'd once, and then it's available for anyone down in the future when we need more data from that backend system. We need to interact with it. At this next up, the process layer, this is where we start orchestrating, where we start composing and putting these data flows together. I like talking about services of record, and this concept of services of record that the CDX is going to help enable, where that service exists outside of the system of record. So we're not really bound by what that the system of record might keep us to. We have big monolithic, a lot of custom code, and we want to be a little bit faster, start pulling some of that functionality away. And then at the top, the experience layer, where we prepare that for consumption. And this is the beginning of how do we compose the whole integration lifecycle, or the whole data maneuverability lifecycle. From identify a need, we create the integration, and then we deploy it, monitor it, manage it. Okay,
Good.
Cool. So what does that look like? This is certainly a very illustrative example. I want you to think back to that example of a sailor on a ship, all the different systems they have to interact with. So here, we'll just start with that middle one on the experience layer, the logistics web API. And say, for instance, that's a web interface that the sailor is going to be interacting with on the ship. Well, we have abstracted and decoupled all this different back-end information from different logistics systems, inventory systems, delivery systems, and brought that through to these processes at the process layer with your services of record. So I can talk about products and orders outside of just talking about the systems of record they live in, and then we deliver it to the logistics web app. A couple things to think about here is when we want to change a back-end system, when it looks like the spaghetti code, it's really hard to trace all the dependencies. When I want to change a back-end system here, we've kind of decoupled those dependencies through the layers of composable architecture. So even if I have a new logistics platform that I'm moving to, I can reconcile between the old and the new at that system API layer. Nothing upstream is really going to care. So these big systems where we have hundreds of interfaces and it's really hard to think about modernizing, about changing. This is this is what our view with the CDX of how we do that. This does also represent the way many, many large logistics organizations, and specifically one within the DoD, is affecting transformation, how we're moving faster, how we're bringing these Amazon-like experiences to the warfighter, and doing billions of transactions annually through architectures like this.
Just to cover another use case with this, for instance, I know we talked a lot about like logistics, or maybe we talk about finance, because those are things that, you know, pretty much are everywhere. But if we think about Navy Net Warcom and Fleet Cyber Command, and we talk about cyber defense, I'm an operator that's supposed to be able to view alerts from across the enterprise. I have to be able also to react to all of those alerts. But if I'm getting inundated with just a flurry of alerts, how can I prioritize, or how do I know where to pivot first? What is the most critical? And then on top of that, how do I know that an alert over here actually correlates with an alert over there? By using APIs and building that in the back, I can actually have maybe a display that says, okay, this specific vulnerability has been found, or you have a bad actor coming from this IP address that's maybe running a DOS and trying to attack at multiple angles. So I have to be able to think quickly, because those reaction times and those reaction windows are very, very limited. So this has a multitude of use cases outside of logistics and finance and the things that we typically tend to think about in an acquisition community. This also can work when you're talking about a sailor on a ship that has to be defending a platform, that has to maybe look at an air operation campaign and see that I have multiple different people in multiple different locations, and I don't want to attack my friendlies, right? I don't want to attack people that I care about. So I need to see data in a much quicker time frame in order to make sure that I take the right actions at the right time.
In all these assets, I know we were hitting on the ATO piece, all these assets, the thought is we kind of ATO them once, and then we consume. They're exposed for others to use in the future. I even think about things like cattle drive, for instance, and how can we bring these systems in and start to pull functionality away. We would call it a strangler pattern and integration, to where I need, you know, I have these 50 systems. Let's figure out what we want to kill off the top. The rest of them we can integrate, and we can start pulling that functionality, abstracting, decoupling that functionality, bringing it to new places. And when we're ready, we can cut the power off on the old thing. The efficiency play, I think about things like flight logging, and I did some napkin math that I won't take you through, but if I land, after every time someone lands, you have about 30 minutes of paperwork to do. There's a true record that you're creating over and over and over again, when in reality, I could do it once, and then I can send that to the UMA, I can send it to the SHARP, I can send it to the logbooks, the training jackets via API. If we save 20 minutes per flight, we're looking at $8 million a year just on that, you know, that one flow. So I think, what are we asking sailors and Marines to do that's not war fighting? And where are they working for a system of record instead of the system of record working for them? We can go to the next slide. This is just the compounding benefits. Like, we move faster over time. So project one, there's a lot of creating assets. There are a lot of ATOing these integrations and these assets. Project two, we start to see how can we reuse what we've already created and what we've already ATO'd, and hopefully, ideally, there's less and less that we need to create as time moves on, and we move faster.
In this one, this is just an example of the siloed approach that we have today, unfortunately. You have a multitude, even in one specific PEO, you'll have a multitude of PMWs that have their own API gateways, and they're not partnering together even within the PEO. So across PEOs, across PMWs, across PMAs, across SysComs, there's a way for us to actively use our resources wisely. And this is just an example of every time you have to set up an API gateway, and you have to create an API, and you have to connect between different systems to get the different data that you need. This is how much we're spending over and over again to fix this, to solve the same problem. But we're trying to solve it at a really small scale, and we're not partnering together very well to be able to break those. So really what CDX is a way for us to break that and to be able to utilize the resources that we have wisely so that we can free up funds for other things, like maybe a ship is short $2 million, I don't know, and they need that, and we can now help finish that ship build. Or maybe there needs to be some artificial intelligence integration that needs to happen, or another new platform needs to be replaced, or there needs to be something at a specific location where maybe the HVAC failed and we have to pivot to spend money to those types of things. Being able to work together by utilizing an actual enterprise service API marketplace, this actually helps us. In the example that John just talked about, that's that dollar figure right there. We can save a large amount of money just by working together and using one single marketplace. Next.
So kind of to piggyback on, on what Tara was talking about is the actual cost benefits associated with deploying the CDX. So there's a lot of different types of integration patterns that we deploy. John talked about a few of them as means of exponentially moving processes to market. And so some of the technology that we'll be showing you here in a demo shortly, integration platform as a service, things like that, are meant to really move that forward at pace. So PEO Digital, we've gone through working with FMS on establishing the CDX, getting its authority to operate. We're currently in process of pulling it out from underneath its current operating environment into a standalone environment. But in that process, we're also working to enable the CDX to work in a more federated approach. We'll dive deeper into what that means from the technology side here shortly in the demo and a few other slides, but at the top level, the objective is to enable the users in whatever works for their method, right? If we're talking about a user group that just wants to enable an API to move data from A to B, we've got integration patterns and models that help that. If we've got organizations that want to control their own data, bring in their own developers, this federated enterprise solution support is meant to create subsidiary CDX nodes that help enable each system based on what their needs and requirements are to get to that end.
And kind of on that point too, a lot of people probably still very much care about control. So what I would like to see as an enterprise marketplace is people building business groups. Instead of having your own runtime that you purchase and now you have to maintain and sustain and all of that fun stuff that you love to do. I know how much everybody loves ATOs. Having a enterprise service where we can establish a business group for you, where you can write your own APIs if you hand your own developers. You can control who has access to those APIs directly by yourself. Like, you can have that level of control and we can help establish that business group for you. If you're maybe a smaller program office and you don't have a full FTE and you don't have access to a developer that can write and knows how to write APIs, we want to be able to provide like that type of service where you can say, hey, I need someone to help write an API for me. I think I need this amount of work. It's going to support these types of use cases, and this is how many APIs it will probably be. Those are the types of things that we can do if we pull our resources together a little bit better. And then the very last one, as far as reuse management plane and ATO and licensing. ATOs, love them so much. My favorite thing. Right now, when you write an API, it basically will take you anywhere from 2 to 3 months to get that API approved. That is not scalable. It is not fast. That is very painful, and it doesn't get us the data that we need when we need it. So by having the management plane in a certain place, we can work with the NAO and that team to be able to have the API delivered once and use it many times. So where maybe we can cut down initially to 2 or 3 weeks versus 2 or 3 months to get that API approved, because now he's going to be able to see where that data is going and who is ingesting that data. There'll be interconnection agreements and MOUs, but again, 2 to 3 weeks versus 2 to 3 months for an API is going to be a big difference. So for this one, This is really just to kind of show some of the technology benchmarks that we're able to hit by using an API marketplace and an API-led architecture, being able to deliver APIs faster that I just talked about, reduction in integration maintenance because we're decoupling, reduction in deployment and run costs because we're utilizing a central enterprise service, improvement in API through using a DevSecOps pipeline, and then also, of course, the very last one ultimately is better governance and control and visibility of where our data is coming from and going to.
Here, the point to hit on is there are thousands of ways to integrate. There's a lot of different ways to get data from point A to point B. Some of the challenges of where we've gotten is there's a lot of point-to-point type solutions that do just a little bit of that. And when we talk data maneuverability across silos, that gets really hard. With the CDX, is just a sample of some of the integration patterns that we can follow, the batch, ETL, pub sub, API, broadcast, all these sorts of different things. We broadly say, if you can ping it, we can connect to it and get data to and from it. We can go to the next one. This is just a sort of high-level architecture of how we'll deploy. We don't need to get into depth here, but we'd love to chat if you have more questions about the management plane and the runtime plane, how we can reuse that management plane. The runtimes, we really can deploy them anywhere. We can deploy them onto a Raspberry Pi. We could put them on anyone's cloud. We could put them on bare metal.
So, and then diving a little bit deeper from what was just talked about, the CDX, aside from just providing that API middleware solution, also comes with a set of tools that's really kind of best of breed. Earlier in the presentation, we talked a little bit about an API library or API marketplace, really hitting on the DoD fulcrum of build once, use many. And the objective of this library, right, is to have a place where CDX users can go in, have access to APIs that have already been built, the documentation, have different access to templates, the POCs for who's built these different APIs so that there's a cross-collaboration. Really meant to be an environment where folks can take and reuse and rebuild and do the things that they need to. Another, and probably very impactful thing about this portion of the CDX is that you'll also have access to hundreds of pre-built connectors. And so as you'll see in the demo at the end of this presentation, you know, those connectors range from everything from like Jira to ServiceNow to SAP that really are meant on expediting speed to market. And so being able to leverage stuff that's already been built to get things out the door quicker and reuse is really mission critical for a lot of folks. Another couple highlights, the runtime manager. There is a user interface plane for that can be leveraged to make sure that you're optimizing CPU usage, all of that type of stuff. And then as we're working right now with Naval Identity Services, the NIST organization, for ultimately accessing into the CDX also has built-in access management tools. So we were talking about a federated approach where CDX users have their own nodes. This access management enables the owners of that node to then go in and control which APIs are public, which APIs are private, and really control what's happening with their data there. And then similarly, when we're talking about, you know, if that is the bank, the API manager is kind of like the vault, right? So the API manager there is meant to be the plane at which you can apply standardized security practices, standardized governance practices, and really go in and make sure that you're controlling what's being pushed out and published in a scalable way. So, you know, wonderful that there's a lot of API integrations and implementations out there. Some of the objectives here is to make sure that we are standardizing the way at which these APIs are designed, developed, and deployed, and then managed and maintained. The biggest thing for me, just based on some of my background here, is how is it that, you know, we can really leverage this true end-to-end visibility of data. And once you've been able to establish that pattern, it's almost limitless with the types of things that you can find. The CDX has a built-in analytics platform that allows you to go in and configure the different types of things that you see. As for instance, the days of like unmatched transactions and audit readiness and things like that can be dramatically mitigated when you're able to see the actual flow of data from one point to the end and the things that happen in between.
And then this one is really just to cover some of the use cases and partners that we've been working with. So right now we're working with the Odin team. Shout out to those guys. With trying to connect FlankSpeed and Jupyter, we want to be able to query from within FlankSpeed to Jupyter, because right now what's happening is people are exporting a lot from Jupyter, trying to do massaging of the data, fit it the way that they need, and then import it. That seems pretty manual. And it gives a lot of chance for errors and as they do that. The other use case that we were working is Jira and ServiceNow for the Enterprise Requirements Governance Board, and we've already completed phase 1 for the development testing and already shown the customer, hey, this is what it looks like in real time. Working with NavSup, NCDoc, NMCI, Enterprise Service Tools to try to get their runtime out, NavC, NavOr CPO, and even NavAir. We also had a conversation with some partners over at NIWIC PAC where they want to be able to reduce the amount of manual effort it will take to redo a certification if they can just use CDX instead in order to partner and get data to a fourth estate agency. So that's it on the use cases. And then very last slide before we pivot to the demo.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. This is basically about how to work with us. So we've got a team of subject matter experts at PO Digital that is there and on call for potential users of the CDX, and essentially we'll work through a series of technical interchange meetings with your team to establish what we call a BRD, or a business requirements document, in which we talk about what your obligations and your goals are, the types of data that you want to move. Does that data need to be translated or converted to anything, and get kind of a picture of what it is from a requirements perspective that you want to do. In parallel, we build out a technical requirements document also that helps inform our development team or whomever's development team of the specific parameters around design and development that associate then with and collaborate with, I guess, the business requirements document. Depending on the solutioning that we come to, we pivot into a proof of concept, proof of technology, I think, as we've got it there on the slide, but working through that initial phase of rubber to road. PEO Digital has an excellent application of scaled agile. So for those of you that aren't like bought in on the scaled agile Kool-Aid, it is a extremely agile and extremely accurate way of tracking what work's being done at what velocity and giving you true to form visibility in the progress of your program. So that's a thing that we definitively excel at as well. Governance comes in a lot of different flavors, and we understand that working with lots of different teams, that they've got different obligations there. We have our own governance approaches that we apply in the way that we manage and maintain the CDX. Similarly, as we're building out the APIs, as we had mentioned, ensuring that your governance standards are being associated in with that development pattern and applied, and routine, regular drum beats with your teams to ensure that all of those things are being squared away.
Okay, so we're gonna switch out laptops real quick, and Jitesh is going to run a live demo. speak up or move the mic.
That's better. Can you hear me now? Oh, that's much better. Thank you. All right, so the next 10 minutes, what I want to do is to actually show the demo of CDX. The requirement is something that CDX did recently that you see on the screen. And it ties to everything that Tara, John, and Paul talked about. It is reusing of the APIs, reusing of the integrations and all that good stuff. And I'll take you through the journey. And I know exactly it's going to take 10 minutes because it's a pre-recorded demo, right? So, all right, so let's get started. So the current process that you have right now is where there's an op now requirements manager, creates a requirement as a part of the electronic requirements governance process, right? That's the first stage in the process that you see on the screen. There are certain things that I would want to bring it to your notice. One is the requirements manager creates a requirement as a ticket inside the Jira system that you see there. And then at the same time, the same information needs to be created inside the ServiceNow ticketing system. Now, someone from PEO Digital takes a look at it and then updates certain things. It creates a demand ticket that needs to be again updated back to Jira. Now we can see what all things it goes behind the scenes, right? It is a lot of manual work which is prone to errors, exactly what Tara was talking about. So how about if there is a way for you to do everything in one place and let the CDX take care of all those integrations for you? And that's exactly what I want to show here. So what you're going to see is how CDX simplifies the process. From the picture itself is very simple. As you can see, CDX is listening for ticket changes in Jira and then automatically synchronizing that to ServiceNow. And when there is a change in ServiceNow, it is automatically synchronized back to Jira as well. So it is fully automated. That's why it's called modernized automated process, excuse me. Now what goes behind the scenes is what I'm going to actually show it to you here with some, this is a pre-recorded demo. So as you can see on the left is the Jira ticketing system. On the right is the ServiceNow. I'm going to create a ticket right now inside Jira with the necessary fields, as you can see. You can see the mouse move there, SU, right? So it creates a ticket inside it. It creates a ticket number for Jira. I'm validating all the contents are looking good. And I also want to show that in ServiceNow, the ticket is not there yet. There's a trigger which happens from the Jira ticketing system that actually initiates the process. So before that, I want to make some modifications, the impact and a few dependencies, and I'm going to change the to-do status to progress to the next level. So as soon as I do that, which I'm going to do right now, as you can see there, the CDX is listening to that action, the change data capture, and then synchronizing that into ServiceNow. In a few seconds, you will see that specific demand automatically created in ServiceNow, right? So let's take a look at those contents here. You can also see that the ticket in Jira has been updated with the ServiceNow ticket ID right there. It is automatically synchronized, no manual intervention involved, right? Apart from that, you're also validating certain contents to make sure that everything is good. And you'll also see that the ticket number from Jira is also synchronized to ServiceNow. So it is a bi-directional synchronization that happens seamlessly, fully automated, right? Now, the next thing in the process is actually validating a few contents in them, as you can see it here, is to go ahead and change the cost that is involved. So right now, the cost that is involved is not updated in Jira yet. So we're going to update the cost inside ServiceNow. And within a few seconds, that information also gets updated back into the Jira ticketing system. For simplicity, we are actually refreshing the page. In reality, you don't need to do that. As soon as you log in, you will see that cost getting updated inside the Jira ticketing system as well. So it is very simple to do this. As a last step, I'm also going to change the title of the ticket itself. I realize it is not right. And you will see that it gets updated inside ServiceNow as well. Now, I paused the recording here because before I want to go to the next topic, I want to bring something to you. Now, you saw a lot of integrations happening behind the scenes, but it is not visible to you. Someone calls up CDX and says, I got a problem. The synchronization is not happening. In general situations, what you do is you ask someone to take a look at the logs. It can take 2 days. I'm just throwing a number right there. But the CDX platform has nice features called Visualizer, which can pictorially show you where the problem is. So I'm going to take you to that journey next, right here. So the feature that I'm talking about is called the Visualizer. You may be able to connect this with the API-led architecture that John and Tara talked about earlier, right? So in this, the actual API and the integration invocation chain is created dynamically like you see here. It is not pre-configured. It generates it automatically for you. And there are 3 layers, as you can see, system, process, and experience API. There is a Jira system API at the bottom, which is essentially connecting to the Jira ticketing system. And there is a ServiceNow system API, which connects to ServiceNow. The primary purpose is to abstract and give a data in the format that is in open API format, right? And then there is a process API, which does all the orchestration that we saw, right? So it is reusability pretty much everywhere there. I will come to that experience API a little later, and there is a purpose for that here. It is about reusability, right? Now, as you can see in this, if you look at the Jira system API, you see that it is taking 1 minute. Just by looking at the picture, you can see that right at the bottom corner. That tells me there is something going on. But at the same time, I cannot say clearly that that's a problem that's going on right now with the delay that someone reported to CDX. So what I'm going to do is to seek the help of some other metrics that is available inside the visualizer itself, right? So there are a bunch of out-of-the-box features that CDX has. To take a look at it, you will see average throughput, the failure rate, and a few things. I'm looking at the failure rate. You see the failure rate is right there. So now I'm confused. Should I look at the failure rate there or the slowness in the other place? So that's why we provide additional metrics there as well, which is about CPU utilization. It looks good. Trust me there, I'm going to move there quick. So if you go to the average memory utilization, you will see that it is pretty high. What that tells me is there is a problem lurking around in that Jira system API. Now I've nailed down the possible area. Either I could engage the developer who wrote it, or I can say that, okay, go and take the logs and then try to find the problem myself. So now this actually simplifies finding the problem much, much quicker for you. You're not looking at the logs first. You're looking at the pictorial piece to identify that where the problem is, pinpoint the problem. This can be really handy when in case of someone calls you and says there is a delay in processing transactions. You can really come and say that, I know the problem. The problem is not us. The problem is someone else. The data sources, your system of records, right? Now, all this information is captured as an API. Tara was talking about the API marketplace when we started, right? So let's take a look at that. So the process API, which does the job right here, is what you're seeing here. And the documentation that you see, 90% that you see on the screen is automatically generated based on API specification. You don't need to have another person do the whole job for you. You can also modify the contents if you will, like you see on the screen. You can add videos, you can have pictures. It makes the whole process easier for someone who is trying to reuse these APIs. For example, if someone wants to reuse the sync API in the future, they can come here and understand that. Those reviews are by me because I like that API too much. I just added a 5-star right there. So you can share these APIs to someone else. You can keep the different versions of the API. A lot of features are there inside this API catalog itself. If you want to try, you can try it out right here, like I'm trying an API behind the scenes to make sure what's the value that I get back. Is this something that I should pursue as a part of my integration? And that's what I'm doing right now. At the moment it's sent, it gives me a response. And what you're doing here, what I'm showing here, there's no coding required. It's automatically created by the CDX platform for you. I also want you to familiarize with just quickly going through the other system APIs. All of them are available for you, right, in this one location. So you don't need to ask in Teams or send an email and find out what are the APIs and all that good stuff behind the scenes, right? Now let me take you to this visualizer once again, right? I need to go back. There is one hidden value that is there in this API-led architecture. The thing is, we only talked about these 3 APIs. There is an experience API here. And the purpose of that is, let's say it's not the users who is actually creating the ticket. It is the external systems that want to create the tickets. So you are extending the capabilities further and saying that it is available for you to reuse. You create an experience API, expose them as in the marketplace. Now you have an API interface that is exposed to the Navy to create tickets inside Jira without any manual involvement, right? So does it make sense? I mean, from what I've seen is it simplifies the integration in APIs in a big way, and the reuse is the key here. Everything that you see on the picture is reusable asset for you. Over. Thank you.
Something to kind of cover that he didn't touch on, but that John and Paul kind of touched on too is within the platform, there's another capability where it allows you to secure your APIs. So say, for instance, I'm a bad actor, and I'm trying to abuse your API to be able to exfil data. Well, I can turn on throttling and say, after 3 failed attempts, it cuts you off, like you can't keep asking. So things like that is what's really great about the CDX platform. It has security built into it as well. So I just wanted to cover that since we didn't have that specific piece in the demo. For me, I personally like that because I am cyber by default, but that's that. So is there anything else that you guys wanted to
So I
cover?
would like to add a little bit on that. Sure. Yeah, so throttling is a big piece. I really missed to talk about it. In my demo use case, you must have noticed that I said there is a delay in responding, right, for that system API. It is taking 1 minute. It is possibly that that underlying system is overwhelmed with volume. Now you can throttle and say that don't hit those systems this much. It is hurting for that specific system. And that feature is there out of the box inside the platform using API policies. So it's much, much easier. You don't need to write any code for that. And apart from that, when you make these APIs available for the broader Navy, there are security in place to connect your APIs to your identity provider and so on. So Tara talked about zero trust. Yes, the platform is compliant to support pretty much many of the zero trust use cases as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and the marketplace itself, like as customers and people want to post their APIs on the marketplace, being able to have those security policies in place based on the data owner from the originator, if they want to make anyone who uses that API come and talk to them first, then they can basically lock that API down that says deny by default. And within the platform itself on the marketplace, it gives like a POC or what specific instructions you need to do in order to ingest that data. So that's another feature that I think personally is really great. All right, anything else? No. Okay, are there any questions? All right, with that, thanks everybody for coming. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much for coming to our talk.